everybody. Jeff Jones here. Welcome to the weekly Chase Oaks Church podcast. Before we dive in, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and download the Chase Oaks Church app. The app is the best place to catch up on messages, engage with our community, and stay in the loop with everything going on around here. Most importantly, my hope is that today's message inspires you to take your next step in your faith journey. Here we go. All right, hello, everybody. Whether you are online right now or at one of our campuses, really glad that you're here. And we are starting a new series called Navigating Us, which is about the key relationships in our life, bonding relationships, as well as bridging relationships, which will make sense through this series. And we just heard the song, from the Curious George movie, is where I remember it. I can tell that we are going to be friends. And such a sweet song, right? Just from a child perspective, and some of you are students and going to school. Most of us are out of school and have graduated from that. But one thing that we don't graduate from is that basic, vulnerable place of wanting friends, right? I mean, a whole bunch of people went to school this last week in our church, a whole bunch of students. And I'm sure some of them were thinking a lot about academics, but most of them not. Mostly you think about your friends. Are my friends from last year going to be there? Are they still going to be my friends? Or if it's a new school, how am I going to make new friends? And we don't graduate out of that. As adults, we too have that same basic desire to be connected. The difficulty, though, is it's not as easy once you leave school and get into normal life and you're pulled in so many directions to build friendships, right? And especially in our culture. I mean, we are increasingly disconnected as a culture, and I think we know that. I originally was gonna give a bunch of statistics, and I've done that before, about how disconnected people feel in our culture, but I don't think I have to do that. Can we just agree that we're a lonely, disconnected culture more than we have been a long time? And when I was on study break, I heard an interview from a Harvard researcher who is a sociologist and an author. His name is Robert Putnam, and like 30-something years ago, he wrote a book called Bowling Alone. And the reason he wrote Bowling Alone with that title was at the time, bowling was still a significant thing, but bowling leagues were not. Like bowling leagues were going down, but people bowling alone was going up. And he saw that as just a picture of what's happening. That was 30 years ago in our culture. And he's devoted his career, he's devoted his life to reversing that trend. So now he's 84, and he was talking about his life and about his career. And he was saying, man, I really fight discouragement because as I look back, I've done everything I could to try to help American culture be more connected, not more isolated. And every time there's a study, every time we look at it, it just gets worse. However, just a few weeks ago, there was a new study done that was really interesting that I hope he hears about and is encouraged by. And it's a study, and it's about church. So they just did this study of young adults, people from 18 to 34. And they contrasted people who are meaningfully involved in church and those who aren't in that age group. It's really interesting what they found. For one thing, 75% of people who are in church said they believe their life is meaningful and significant. Of those who are not involved in church, about 49% felt that way, which is interesting. Also with connection, this is striking. So of men, unchurched men, 18 to 34, 27% said that they had a meaningful connection with another person. That's not great, 1 out of 4. However, for those meaningfully involved in church, the number jumped up to 68%, which is massive. There's a 21-point difference also with women on the same question. So you're already ahead of the curve just by being in church. And yet, sitting in a row or being in church is a great step. But how do we actually go beyond that to actually build the kinds of bonding connections? Bonding connections are those that we're something we have in common with, people that we're on a life journey with, that are with us and for us in life that we all crave. How does bonding happen? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And then in the rest of this series, we're going to look at specific bonding relationships. Like next week is friendship. And how do we grow friends? And we'll look at different kinds of relationships all the way to at the end when we'll look at different kinds of relationships, what he calls bridging relationships with people who are different and the importance of that. But today we're going to get started by thinking about our key relationships that we would love to get stronger. And it would be helpful for you to think about, man, what are one or two relationships? It could be a friendship, could be a marriage, could be a romantic relationship, could be with a child or a parent or a coworker, somebody in church. And just think about, okay, what is the process of bonding close together? And to help us, I've got, Velcro, such an incredible invention, Velcro. And it's just fun to do this, right? And make that noise. And Velcro is really cool because all it is, it's hard to see because they're so small, but it's hooks on this side, little hooks, and on this side, a lot of loops. And the more hooks and loops it has, and the more hooks the hook into the loops happen, the stronger the Velcro and the stronger the connection. And so today, we're gonna see 3 really important hooks and loops. To think, man, I would love to be more deeply connected, but how does that happen? And this is not exhaustive, but these are 3 very significant ones. And we're going to see it through a person in the New Testament who had a lot of connection. He was a person whose relational world was dense and deep. And I'm talking about the Apostle Paul in the New Testament. And we're going to be in a passage where Paul, it honestly feels like a throwaway passage in the Bible. It's Romans 16. It's the last chapter of the book of Romans. Romans, if you ever read it, I encourage you to do that. It's an incredible book and deep and rich and wonderful. And then Romans 16 happens at the end and you're like, yeah, whatever. Like if you're reading through the New Testament, you just kind of skip it. Or I've never seen anybody put Romans 16, like cross-stitch it and put it on their wall or anything like that because it's Paul greeting people. And there's all these, greet so-and-so, all these hard to pronounce names. And so you don't hear sermons on this chapter. However, today you will. There's gold in here. And it's gold because what it is a little relational snapshot of Paul's life. It's like a selfie of people who are close to him in the church in Rome. And between the lines, you see, okay, that's why he had those kind of connections. And we're gonna see 3 really important connections. So as we read this passage, I'm gonna read it to you. You're gonna have to really key in. It's like going to school for the first day. You're not used to paying attention. You gotta pay attention now. And it's kind of like this because I want you to read between the lines and think, yeah, okay, of all this relational world, where are those relational connections, those bonding catalysts? Here's the passage. You ready? It's kind of long, a lot of names. We can do it, right? Here it is. I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a deacon of the church in Cenchrea. I ask you to receive her in the Lord in a way worthy of his people and to give her any help she may need from you. For she has been the benefactor of many people, including me. Greet Priscilla and Aquila, my co-workers in Christ Jesus. They risked their lives for me. Not only I, but all the churches of the Gentiles are grateful to them. Greet also the church that meets at their house. Greet my dear friend Epaenetus, who was the first convert to Christ in the province of Asia. Greet Mary, who worked very hard for you. Greet Andronicus and Junia, my fellow Jews who've been in prison with me. They are outstanding among the apostles, and they were in Christ before I was. Greet Ampliatus, my dear friend in the Lord. Greet Urbanus, our co-worker in Christ, and my dear friend Stachys. Greet Apelles, whose fidelity to Christ has stood the test. Greet those who belong to the household of Aristobulus. Greet Herodian, my fellow Jew. Greet those in the household of Narcissus who are in the Lord. Greet Tryphena and Tryphosa, those women who work hard in the Lord. Greet my dear friend Persis, another woman who's worked very hard in the Lord. Greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother, who's been a mother to me too. Greet Asyncritus, Phlegon, Hermes, Patrobas, Hermas, and other brothers and sisters with them. Greet Philologus, Julia, Nereus and his sister, and Olympus, and all the Lord's people who are with them. Greet one another with a holy kiss. You got through it. You did good. Most of you are awake. That's a good sign. So we're already doing great. And yet I hope you could hear something, not only the depth of Paul's relationships and the breadth of them, but also some of the keys to getting it. And the first one that I want to pull out is a very powerful bond, and that is shared mission. Shared mission. Because when you look at Paul's relational world, this selfie, this little snapshot, what you see is a very diverse group of friends. He had a very diverse friendship group. For one thing, it was very diverse socioeconomically. And the way we know that is that in ancient Rome, names told a whole lot more about a person than in our world. Like, my name is Jeff, and that's just very vanilla. That doesn't tell you anything, but it does tell you that I wasn't born recently, because nobody names their kids Jeff anymore. So it tells you, okay, he's at least 40 years old. But other than that, it doesn't say anything. It's just Jeff. But the way names worked back then, it said a whole lot more. And so scholars who understand that, when they look at these names, believe that, or actually they know, that over half of these names were people who were slaves or former slaves. So they were on the lower end of the social strata. But then there are people like Phoebe, who it says was a benefactor, which is an important word, benefactor or patron. We'll talk about that. Those are people who were wealthy and highly connected. They were at the upper end of the strata. There are other people that he talks about who have, like Priscilla and Aquila, the church meets in their house. So they were wealthy people who had a big enough house for a church to meet in. So you had people at the top end, people at the bottom end, and some people in between. It was a very diverse socioeconomic group, his friendship group. Not only that, also very diverse racially. There were Jews and Gentiles, the Jewish race, Gentiles, Bible for all the other races. And among the Gentiles, the names tell us a whole lot there too, that there are people from lots of different races within the Roman Empire. So he had a very racially diverse mix of bonding connections as well. Not only that, a lot of gender variety too. It's just men and women, but he had 11 of these names are female, or 11 of the people were women, and 14 were men. So Paul, single guy, deeply connected to a lot of people, and he had really good friends, bonding connections, ministry co-workers who were women and who were men, and he had a very rich relational life. Enough that you think, oh man, I would love that. And yet these people are so different. Why did he have it? And the reason he had it is because of what they had in common. And that's what bonding relationships are. It's relationships where they may be very diverse, but you have something very, very important in common. And in the case of Christians, in the case of Paul, it's shared mission. These were people who shared his connection to Jesus, his commitment to the mission of Jesus, and they had served together in ministry. They didn't just hang out with each other. They didn't just eat donuts together. They had spent time serving God together and serving God's purposes together over a period of time, long period of time. Like Priscilla and Aquila that he mentions. Those are a married couple. We know more about them than we know about anybody else in this list of names we just read. Priscilla and Aquila show up in Acts and in different letters of the New Testament too. And when Paul started the church in Corinth, we have 1st and 2nd Corinthians, they were part of that team. They were part of his ministry team that started that church. And then when he left Corinth to go start the church in Ephesus, they traveled with him and helped start the church in Ephesus, where he spent several years. And so they had spent a lot of time over the years, off and on, directly and indirectly, in ministry with each other, and therefore they were tight. And one of the most powerful ways we bond with other people is not when we just hang out, but when we do things together that are purposeful, when we serve together. I saw a more modern example of that this week. Jack Warren and I, Jack is on our staff, he's one of our executive pastors, and Jack and I were meeting with two leaders in our church who were in college. Aiden, who leads our college ministry, and Sam, who has been leading this summer They've been residents and interns in the past. They've grown up in our church. They've served in youth ministry, now in college ministry together. And it was just kind of a developmental conversation we were having with these two really great young leaders. And it was really cool to see the bond between these two people who for years, even though they're young, have served together and have grown together and are very intentional about that with each other. It was just awesome. But then also, as I was looking, they were on my left and right. Across the table was Jack. Here's Jack, by the way. If you, that's this week at staff meeting. We did a little thing in staff meeting about going bananas, but that's Jack. And as I looked across the table, it's just a cool realization as I'm talking to these two college students, because Jack and I met in college. In fact, this week is like our 40th anniversary of friendship. Because 40 years ago, isn't that incredible? I was a freshman and he was a senior. We started doing youth ministry together. And then when he moved out to Dallas, got involved in this church. When I moved out to Dallas to go to graduate school, Dallas Seminary, day one, literally day one, when we drove in, we started doing youth ministry together here. And we've been doing ministry together for 40 years. Here at this church, 36 years, which is amazing. And when in the bond that we have, all the ups and downs and sideways of life, but it started by doing youth ministry together. And when I look out right now, I'm looking at many of you that have been here a long time, and I've done different ministry with you over the years, and we've served together, and it's a powerful thing, longevity, and doing ministry together over a period of time. There's nothing like it to bond people together. A number of you got involved in ministry last week, Get in the Game weekend, or you're thinking about it. And one of the benefits is the relationships that you develop. And those of you who are already in the game and who are serving, it's a powerful way to do it. And our groups too are linked not just around hanging out. Our small groups are also linked around, hey, let's do life together and let's serve God together in different ways. So the first bond we see, the bonder, is shared mission. It's a powerful one. And the next one is too, and that is expressed affection. Expressed affection. Because when you hear this list, Paul could have easily at the end of Romans just said, hey, tell everybody I know hi. But he doesn't. He names all these people. But not only that, he doesn't just name them. Like he could just say, tell Rufus hello. But he doesn't. He adds something. He said, tell Rufus, chosen by God, hello. Now that tells you a lot. The sense of that is this. Tell Rufus, wisely chosen by God, because Rufus is awesome. Tell him hi. There's all these little phrases that he uses in here. He says, of expressing admiration for people. He says, somebody's outstanding among the apostles. Another person whose fidelity has stood the test. Another person, a number of people actually, multiple times he says, who worked very hard for the Lord, who worked very hard for you. Rufus, chosen by God. Also terms of affection. He says for several people, my dear friend. Another person, a mother to me too. Another person, beloved, or one that I love. Paul, when you read his letters, sometimes he gets really flowery and a little gushy at the beginning of letters, saying, oh, I long to see you. I miss you so much. Please come. I just can't wait to see you. Or he'll talk about how deeply he thanks God for them because our hearts are bound together. He's very expressive of affection. Not only in terms of saying things like, I love you, my beloved, and I appreciate you, and I'm so thankful for you, but also even physical affection. He says at the end of this, the last verse we read was, greet one another with a holy kiss. So turn to somebody next. No, don't do that. Some of you are doing it anyway, but do it later if it's appropriate. But greet one another. Well, in some cultures, kissing is a thing, right? The point is physical affection. I remember the first time I went to the Ukraine. I saw it was very alive and well in the Ukraine. I was in this person's office, the head of the Baptist Union, and his name was Dukhanchenko. He was legendary as a leader, had been in prison in communism for decades and all this. Anyway, just quite a guy. So he's sitting behind his desk, big desk, and I'm on the other side and listening to him. It's such an honor to be there and to get to know him a little bit. And I'm trying to really focus because it's such a cool opportunity, but I'm a little ADD. And in the corner was something very distracting to me. And that was this group of 5 guys. They looked like they belonged in ZZ Top. They had awesome beards, but really long and full beards. Some of you have those, and that's it's just great. And they had them, and so they're in the corner and they're eating lunch. And what they're eating is, in Alabama we would call it fat back, but it was this big chunk of pork fat, like this big, like huge, and a little ribbon of meat. Like you can see this tiny little bit of color. And you can tell I'm having trouble concentrating to this guy talking to me, right, as I'm looking at this, because it was over bread, and they were eating it. They had to really open their mouths, and as they eat the fat back on bread, the fat is just running down their beard. This big, greasy beard thing going on. And I'm just watching this happen and trying to be like, oh, yeah, thank you, that's wonderful, praise God. And look at it. And I guess he could tell after a while. He said, oh, let me have you meet these 5 pastors over here. They're from a remote part of the country. And so these guys come to meet me. I put out my hand to shake. And that's not what happens. The first greasy beard guy wasn't a cheek kiss. Lands one right on me. I was not expecting that. And I don't know if I was holy or they're weirdos. I had no idea. But it was a kiss. And I was thinking, oh no, because that's just number 1, right? There's 4 guys. And a few times in my life, I've really prayed hard for Jesus to come back quickly. And that was one of them. And all 4 guys feel obligated to do this. And I'm trying not to just be so grossed out with, I could feel the grease. It's that bad. And so in some cultures, right, it's still a thing. Now, 2,000 years ago, greet one another with a holy kiss, and like a lot of places in Europe and stuff, kissing's a little bit more of a thing, and usually it's a cheek thing, and in the Roman era, that's what they did, and that's better, right? But as Americans, we're actually on the lower side of affection, both in terms of physical and even expressing affection. Like when I travel to different parts of the world, lots of parts of the world are much more effusive in affection. And it's actually really important as a bonder. It's the way God created us. Like we know that from brain chemistry. Like when somebody, I'm not talking about greasy bearded dudes you don't know, but people that you know and that you want to get close to, that affection, both verbal, saying things like, I love you, I'm so glad to see you, I missed you, or physical affection, hugging, or different kinds of relationships, whatever, then that physical affection actually changes our brain chemistry. So when that happens, our brain releases oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone that makes us emotionally closer to that other person. Also, our cortisol levels go way down. Those are stress hormones. So we're less stressed, we feel safe, and our bodies also produce endorphins, dopamine, that makes us feel happy. There's just a lot. God has designed affection to be not just, and here's the thing, it's not just, when I feel close to somebody, then I'll be affectionate. I get that, but it's actually the other way around. That part of how we will feel close to someone is by expressing affection. That's part of what bonds us together. Somebody told me years ago, a pastor, he was having a marriage counseling thing with this couple, and the wife was complaining that after 40 years, he never said, I love you, wasn't affectionate, and he said, look, I told you when we got married, I loved you. And if I ever change my mind, I'll let you know. And that's not good, right? But that's not just true of marriage, that's true of all kinds of relationships. And so just one of the things Paul did, you read it and you think, wow, Paul, you're kind of, but that's actually a good thing. We should be more expressive. One trend that I think is really cool that's growing, it just even in culture, Christian, not Christian, is I hear more people saying, like when they leave a restaurant or with friends or whoever, just say, hey man, love you. which, even 10 years ago, you just wouldn't, I don't know, you wouldn't do that. I think it's great. Or just write the text when when you've met with somebody or you're thinking about them, or say, man, I really enjoyed lunch. Thank you so much for taking the time. Or, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. I hope you're doing okay because I miss you and I'd love to know how to pray for you. Or when it's appropriate, appropriate ways of physical affection, whether it's a hug or, kissing in marriage or however you want. I don't know but affection is a powerful and important thing. It's actually a bonder. And I think most of us could up our game on this. Some of you, you're good. But a lot of us, probably could do better. And the last one, the third one, is really a powerful one. It's maybe the most powerful, and that's mutual sacrifice. And here I mean sacrificial support. Being there for somebody when being there is really hard. And we know how hard, we live life and life is hard. And when life is hard, we can try to gut it out and get through what we're going through on our own, but it's a whole lot better when there's other people who join us in that and who are in that journey with us, right? And we're created that way. And when you look at these names, that's one of the things that you see in a really powerful way. It's one of the things that bonded Paul with this selfie group. For example, there's one couple that were in prison with him. They suffered together. They got through a very difficult situation together. He also talks about Phoebe. He's the first one, who likely is the one who actually took the letter that he wrote to the Romans, to Rome, where she lived. And Phoebe is an interesting person because, for one, she was a deacon, he says. Now, that tells us a whole lot. So a deacon in the New Testament, and we'll talk about this later in the fall, so if it makes you curious, just hang on until the fall. But in the New Testament world, you had elders and deacons were kind of what you would think of as like church offices, and pastors were a gift. That was actually, nobody called people pastor back then, 2000. We do now, and it's okay, it's no problem. But what we call pastor 2,000 years ago, they would call a deacon. So she was a deacon, she was a pastor, one of the pastors in the church in Rome. And therefore, she was a significant leader there, but she was also, and I know some of you are like, wait a minute, what? Again, just wait till the fall. And in the other thing he says, the other title he gives her is a really important one. It tells us a whole lot about her, and that is benefactor or patron. So in Roman culture, it says she's been the benefactor of many people, or she'd been the patron of many people, including me. In Roman culture, it was a patron-client system. It was a patronage system, and that's just the way it worked. It's how business was done. It's how people were elevated. It's networking and all that. So you would have wealthy, connected people in the Roman Empire, like Phoebe, who was a patron for other people who were not as wealthy and not as well connected. It was patron-client. This is what they call that. Clients were just like normal people who would be befriended by a patron, and they'd be loyal to that person. It was a mutually beneficial relationship, but that patron would do things like maybe pay for your kid's education or arrange a party. It's one of the reasons they did so many parties, is they would do these parties, and a patron would invite you with their very deeply connected friends so that you could also grow in connections for jobs, for business, for all that. It's just the way it works. So a patron in that culture, people felt like it was a responsibility. Like if you were wealthy and you were connected, then your job was to be a patron for others. Phoebe decided, she was a Christian, but she decided that she was going to give her patronage to people like Paul and other Christians in Rome, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but that was very sacrificial. In fact, that was very dangerous. That would have made her made her social capital go down, not up. Because she lived in a time in Rome where Claudius was the emperor who had expelled Christians from Rome for a while, all the ones that he knew about. Nero was the next one, who would eventually be the one responsible for the Apostle Paul's death, that's writing this, who instigated these persecutions against Christians. It was a time in which if you didn't want to be known as a Christian in Rome, or helping Christians in Rome. But Phoebe, as a wealthy, connected Roman, decided, well, I'm just going to be faithful and let God do what he's going to do and either protect me or not protect me. And she outed herself as a Christian and elevated Christians that people like the emperors were trying to stamp down. That was bold, it was gutsy, and sacrificial. She was there for people who were going through a very, very hard time as Christians and helped them. And then you have Priscilla and Aquila. And it's interesting because Priscilla and Aquila, this ministry, they've been part of his ministry team. And Paul says, they risked their lives for me. At a difficult time, they risked their lives for me. Literally, in the Greek, was a common phrase that was used. That was kind of smooths it out, but literally it's, they laid down their necks for me. It was a phrase that was used when, like a Roman, if you were a soldier and you were surrendering yourself to other soldier, like the enemy, you would literally bare your neck. It was a way of, and basically, hey, you take your sword, do what you need to do, or spare me, but I'm yours, like I'm surrendering. It was a vulnerable, risky thing to do. And that was a common phrase they used when somebody stuck out their neck for you. When somebody joined you in your difficult situation at their expense. And Paul, we don't know exactly when that happened, but it was enough where he says all the Gentile churches are thankful that they did that. And what he's talking about is he'd be dead if it wasn't for that. They were with him and for him in life when it was great, and more importantly, when it wasn't. And all of us are created with that need to have people in our life that are with us and for us to get through what we're going through, especially what we're going through is tough. One of the people that I follow is a guy named Henry Cloud. He's a psychologist and an author, and I get these emails from him. It seems like once a week or something like that. And a while back, it's why I have actually 2 monkeys up here. And the reason I have these little monkeys is he sent out an email that I'm going to read to you. And the question was, who's your monkey? And here's what he said. One of my favorite studies was done years ago with monkeys, measuring the effects of relationships on cortisol levels in the brain. Now, whoever did this was a little sick, this experiment, but he liked it. Cortisol is a hormone associated with high levels of stress. In this particular experiment, a monkey was put in a cage and exposed to a high level of psychological stress, including loud noises, flashing lights, shaking the cage. They pretty much scared the little monkey to death. I know, I'm telling you. Aw. When the monkey was totally terrified, the scientist took a baseline measure of stress hormone levels in the monkey's brain as it was exposed to these stressors. Then the researchers introduced one change into the experiment. They opened the door and put in a buddy, another monkey, into the cage. That was it. They exposed the monkey to the same loud noises, flashing lights, and then took another measure of stress hormones. And the result? The level of stress hormones in the brain had dropped in half. The lone monkey was only half as good at handling stress as the pair was together. So then he says, my question for you guys is, who's your monkey? Which is a great question. Who's your monkey? Then when life gets really difficult and your cage is shaken, do you have people in your life that will get in the cage with you? And are you the kind of person that when somebody else's cage is shaken, will get into the cage with them? I mean, I talked about Jack earlier, and we've been friends for 40 years, and one of the things I really appreciate about him is the times in my life over these 40 years that have not gone well, or dealing with grief or depression or loss and he's jumped in that cage with me. And it's one of the reasons I'm standing here and okay. It's because of Jack. And I bet all of us can think of somebody in our relational world whose cage is shaken. And you and I have an opportunity. Because when you and I actually do go into that with somebody, it's not just the result of a bonded relationship. It's one of the ways that really binds us to people. Because, man, when you've been in a tough situation and somebody is sacrificial and somebody has been there for you, you don't forget that. Like, that binds you together. It's part of what builds the kind of relationships that we all want. It's as difficult as it is, it's actually an opportunity also to bond people together. It's one of the ways God uses it in a good way, even when the thing is bad. And the deal with getting in the cage with somebody is not having all the right answers that make it all make sense, or fixing it. I mean, if you can fix something, but often it's not, like, and I mean, really, if you can help practically and all that, that's great. But if you can't, it's just being there. That was the experiment. They just put the other monkey in the cage. And so let me encourage you some of you are wondering, like, should I, or I don't know what to say, or whatever. Who cares what you're gonna say? Just be there and enter into the cage. These were people in Paul's life who were those kind of people. And when you look at Paul's relational world, it was rich and deep. I think what all of us would really want, and that comes with effort. It doesn't just happen. And so I want you to think about somebody in your life, one or two people right now that you would love a tighter bond with. It could be a friend, a spouse, a sibling, a child, a parent, somebody in this church that you serve with, or I don't know who, but just pick one or two people. And then let's think through this a little bit. Like how could you grow that connection? Is it shared mission? To begin to serve together? And I encourage you to do that as friends, as life groups, as small groups. Ministry teams, you already are serving together, or as married couple or family. Serving together is a powerful bonder. And we have so many opportunities here to serve with local good and all this stuff. Just let me encourage you to do that. Some of you are, like I said, have just jumped in. Like you think, man, I don't really have friends or whatever, and getting in groups is great, or beginning to serve and getting in a team, but shared mission. And then expressed affection. What would it look like for you to appropriately up your affection game? Maybe just simple as sending a text that says, man, I really appreciate you. Or doing a phone call. Says, hey, I was thinking about you. You mean a lot to me. And I hope you know that. Or hugging somebody on the way out the door. Some of you don't like that, are gonna really leave early. I know, you're like, get me out of here. But just think about that. And then mutual sacrifices. There's somebody who really needs you in their cage right now. And if so, let me encourage you to take a step toward them, not away from them. Because ultimately, God really wants us to have the kind of connections that Paul had, the kind of connections we all want when we were a kid going to school and hope that we have friends. We're made that way. So let's take some steps that way. God will help us do this too. So let's pray and ask him to. Father, thank you for just the opportunity we have in a church like this to develop connection. And I pray you'd help us take advantage of it, to move beyond just sitting in a row to moving toward a team or a group. So many people are doing that, and I pray that you would honor that and that you would build connections. And God, I pray for all of us too, as we think about one or another person or two people or whatever that we'd love to grow connection with. God, would you help us be a good connector? Not just wait for them to figure it out, wait for them to move toward us. Help us move toward them. Whether that's shared mission or expressed affection or moving into their difficulty. God, whatever it is that you call us to do, God, would you help us to be that kind of friend, that kind of spouse, that kind of brother, that kind of sister, that kind of coworker. And God, we thank you that that's how you relate to us, that you want to be connected to us, that you move toward us. And I pray for people right now who maybe would want to begin a relationship with you. That's what Christianity is. And I know some of you are figuring that out, and you got questions, and I get it, but But you may be ready to say, hey, God, I want to know you. I want a relationship with you. You sent Jesus to make that possible, to take the guilt of sin away so that I could be forgiven. All that's been dealt with, and all you want me to do is just say yes to what you offer freely as a gift, a relationship with you that starts now, lasts forever. And I say yes. God, we thank you for all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.